What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another install demonstration. What you see here before you is the SpeedGhoul by Kenstomoto. It's a complete plug-and-play headlight assembly. It replaces the factory headlight. This will fit all year models of the FZ and MT09. It really does a lot to change the look of the bike and help you stand out from the crowd. I'm going to show you exactly what you need to install it and how to install it. Let's get started. Okay guys, so here it is. This is the Kenstomoto SpeedGhoul. Of course, it looks a little bit different than the intro video. This thing does come in a lot of different pieces, but don't worry, it's extremely simple to install. Includes all the hardware, a wire harness, and a gauge relocator. This is going to be for the 2017 and newer models. The prior year models are going to be a little bit different as far as wiring, and it doesn't need the gauge relocation. And as far as tools, the only thing that you'll need to install this headlight assembly are going to be some Allen wrenches, an 8 and a 10mm socket, a couple of zip ties, and a pair of pliers. I guess the first thing we need to do in order to put this headlight on is get the old one off. So let's go ahead to the bike and get that started. We start by taking this small cover off with the 4mm Allen. Just one bolt and then it snaps off just like that. Now, most of the stock hardware that we remove will not be reused, but there are a couple of things that will be. Now we can pull this rubber boot back and unplug the wire harness from the gauge panel. All right, next step is we're going to take these 4 bolts off that remove this cover on the headlight housing. Those are going to be held on with 4 5mm Allen bolts. To remove this cover, just kind of pry it out. There's a grommet on the inside of here that's holding it in, and the entire cover will snap off. Now there's going to be a wire harness here that needs to be removed in order to release this cover completely. So you just pull that tab out and pull the harness out. That will unplug it and free up the top portion. Now on that one, there's a metal tab on the inside of here that you also need to pry on. That one you can pry it towards the wire harness and then slide the cover off. Okay, so now that we have that removed, we can remove the 3 bolts that hold the LCD gauge panel to its holder. I'm going to go back to a 4mm Allen. There are 3 bolts holding this on. And these will be reused. Okay, now we can remove the gauge panel from the holder and set that aside for now. Now our next step, we can take off the 2 bolts on the side of the headlight assembly. Remove those 2. This is going to be, again, a 4mm Allen. These 2 bolts will be reused. Now we can feed the wire harness through this opening, and we can remove the entire headlight assembly. Okay, now we can go ahead and remove some of this wiring from the factory brackets. We first need to unplug these 2 wires that go to the horn. Let's pull them straight back. Now you'll see the wires are being held to this bracket with this plastic holder here, and then there's also one over here that needs to be removed. So in order to get that off, we'll get a pair of pliers. Pull it straight out. Okay, we have this upper one that holds the brake line. All right, we just open this up. That will release the brake line from that one. Now we need an Allen wrench so that we can remove this bolt that holds the brake line to this bracket. Once again, 4mm Allen bolt. Okay, this metal portion comes off. You can remove the brake line. Let's put this back in so we don't lose it. We'll remove these 2 bolts to remove this bracket with a 10mm socket. These 2 bolts will be reused. On this one, be careful when you remove it because it does hold the horn onto the bike. All right. Okay, now we can remove this last plastic wire holder from the back side using a pair of pliers. Same way as we did the first one. Squeeze in the tabs and pull the harness out. All right, we can now install the switch assembly. We're going to need to move the clutch perch over a little bit. The instructions from Kenstomoto say to move the clutch lever in, but I have enough room where I can move mine this direction towards the inside instead of towards the outside and still get the switch in here. As long as your clutch can still be disengaged fully, it should be fine. And that's going to be a 2.5 millimeter Allen wrench. All right, now we can retighten the clutch perch. The wires can just follow the factory wire harness through this keeper and down behind the forks, and will come out through the front. All right, so you'll run the wires through here, between the forks and into this metal D-ring that holds the throttle cables, and then we'll be securing that somehow to the wire harness when we tie everything in. Now we can go over to the workbench and mount the horn to the new headlight assembly. All right, so what we need to do is remove this little L bracket. That's a 4 millimeter Allen bolt. This bracket won't be used on the new assembly. All right, and now we can take the new headlight assembly and turn it over. This is the bottom side of it, and you want to remove this rear bolt. Okay, and now you reinstall it in this configuration. All right, just making sure that the horn is centered on the headlight. Okay, now this assembly is ready to be put on the bike. Okay, so using the two 10 millimeter bolts that we removed from the factory assembly, we're going to install the new headlight assembly. These are going to be just kind of hand tight at first, and we'll tighten them up after we get the side brackets on. We'll take a zip tie and take the new switch wire and tie it back to this brake line. And then we cut off the excess. Now we can get the LCD panel ready and installed on the new bracket. So in order to install the new gauge bracket, we need to first remove the rubber grommets from the factory bracket. There are 3 of those on here. You just press them through the hole and pull them out. Okay. And we can now reinstall them on the new bracket. And then we can install our gauge. Now we reinstall the 3 screws on the back. Now we can install the gauge on its new location. Okay, you'll see these 2 bolts right here on the handlebar clamps. We're going to install the new bracket right there. We need to remove the bolts in order to do that. It's going to be a 5 millimeter Allen. So you're just going to place this right back into that position and reinstall the 2 bolts. And we can plug the wire harness back into the panel until you hear it click. And then you can reinstall the rubber boot. Okay, so now we can install the new wire harness. Just match it up with the plugs that are here. This is from the factory wire that we took off of the cover. That plugs into there. This is for your switch. That's going to plug straight into here. The small blue wire, which plugs into here. Each plug is different, and they all have a guide that puts them in the right orientation, so you really can't mess that up. Okay, and to plug in the headlight bulb itself, you're going to loosen up these 2 rear bolts that secure the headlight housing, allows it to rotate, tilt it forward, and then you can slide the wire harness into this hole that's in the bracket, and bend it back up and plug it in from the bottom. And you can push this back down. Now we can reinstall the 2 wires for the horn. Okay, so now we can tighten up the 2 bolts that we had to loosen in order to get the bulb in. Now this is what aims your headlight up and down. I'm going to kind of set it in the center. If you want to, you can actually power it up and set the aim on it at this time. Okay, we can now start to install the side arms. This is the bracket here for the for the left side of the bike. This is going to mount up here at the top using the factory bolt that we removed from the stock headlight assembly. We'll put that on here. We won't go too tight with anything right now until we get both sides on, where we can line everything up while it can still move around a little bit. Okay, now let's go ahead and get the one on the right side. Make sure that you're not pinching any of the wires or brake lines. It's going to run on the inside of the bracket and then come out on the side and just sit on the outside down here. Once you have all of this lined up, you can go ahead and tighten these bolts down fully. Okay, and now we can tighten up the two 10mm bolts that hold the assembly. Again, double check as you go to make sure that you're not pinching any wires or cables anywhere. But now we can put in the box that controls the LED lights. This is going to plug into the wire harness, and then it's going to be held in with 4 bolts. Okay, and next there's one more plug that comes off of the running lights. That's going to plug into this harness, a small black plug. All right, now we can make sure that all the wires are tucked in, nothing is in a bind. We can turn our key on, and we can test it, make sure that the running lights come on when you press the button. While that turns on your headlights, you won't see the high beams until you start the bike. All right, now we can mount the brackets that go on the inside of here that hold the windshield assembly on. Go ahead and tighten those down fully. All right, and next we can put in the center portion. That's going to mount here from the side. All right, and we can tighten that down. Okay, now we can put in the windshield. These are going to be the 4 bolts that are different than all of the rest of them that we've done so far. And make sure also that the windshield is behind this metal tab on the front of the headlight. You do have to kind of stretch it a little bit to get it on. Don't tighten them up fully yet until all 4 bolts are in. You can crack the windshield if you tighten up too much, so be careful. Okay, now we're ready to put our side covers on. And these covers are going to mount with 2 bolts, one on the underneath and one on the outside. It's going to go on this top hole on the side arm. and the one from the bottom end. All right, and lastly we have a small trim piece on the bottom end. That's going to go here from the side. In case you're wondering, all of these bolts are identical, so it's really easy to put together. You don't have to worry about different lengths of bolts, different sizes. The only thing that's different are the four that hold the windshield on, but every other bolt on here, on the new headlight assembly at least, is the same. All right, and we'll repeat that for the other side. So that is it. I think this thing really does change the look of the bike, makes it unique. These are really popular bikes, and there are a lot of them on the street, so this will help to differentiate yours. All right guys, so that's going to do it for another one. Please remember to leave some comments down below. Hit that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel. We've got a lot more stuff in the works. Thanks for watching.